Hello and welcome. My name is Bishe and I'm here to share with you today a personal reflection on emotional intelligence. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about listening and how listening can be a very empowering thing that leaders can do for the people that they lead. I remember at about the beginning of 2011, we're watching TV as some of the aspirants for the governorship of Delta State in Nigeria were doing a debate. Now, one of the aspirants was asked, "Sir, how do you plan or what do you intend to do for the young people of Delta State?" And his response, as I remember, was, I will empower the people of Delta State. And the presenter asked, "Very good, sir. So how do you intend to empower the people?" And he shook his head and he scratched it a bit. And then he said, I will empower them with empowerment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you really want to empower your people, you would find something more creative than empowerment to empower them with. One of the things I have found that truly empowers people is listening. Leaders listen to empower. As we listen to this tape and as you watch me, many of us are guilty of assuming that we are very good listeners. The statistics show, however, that most leaders are not good listeners. They are not good listeners because leaders are typically in charge. They are typically the person who is always talking, the person who gives direction, that gives focus, sets priorities, trust me, the person that ensures that deadlines are being met. That person often isn't a very good listener. Now, many times we even learn, as we learn leadership and emotional intelligence, that we need to pay attention when we listen. I have found extraordinarily that many people listen to respond, they listen to react. And sometimes I find that in spousal relationships, in those relationships between boyfriends and girlfriends, between wives and husbands, there's a lot of lack of listening going on. I share with you a personal story on listening. And I remember a few months ago, about a year ago, my wife comes home. At that time, I just started running Learning Impact. We would spend the days in training, the nights writing, training manuscripts, and I would get home and maybe at about 9 o'clock, I would, doze off. And my wife would say, "Oh, Michelle, wake up. You need to keep awake. Why do you sleep so early?" And I would look at her and say, "But I'm working really hard. You know that the job I do is very cerebral. I have to sleep early so I can wake up the next day." The next day, the same cycle continues. "Michelle, why are you sleeping so early?" And I say, "This woman, don't you understand? Leave me alone." And then the third day again, and at that point I look at her and I say that, "My dear, happy are those who know where their husbands are. Thank God you know where your husband is." I wasn't listening. And I remember she gave me a look like, why have we taken this conversation to this point? The reason was that I wasn't listening. What I was doing what? I was listening to react, listening to respond. By the fourth day, she raised the question again. And at that point, I realized that, come on, Bishe, you are the emotional intelligence trainer. You are the man who teaches leadership and the right behavior. Listen. And so I practiced what we called empathic listening. Listening with empathy, listening to understand. And so I asked her one question, and I believe this is the hallmark of empathic listening. The idea is to understand where the other person is coming from. So I said to my wife, "Kemi, tell me, why do you want me to stay awake?" And then she tells me. She says that when I come back and go to sleep, she doesn't have time to tell me about her own work, to give me feedback from the children and their school. And so I then said, "Oh, is that all? No problem. I will stay awake for another 1 hour to listen, and so that you can tell me all these things." I often find in spousal relationships, and I know the ladies are going to love me when I say this, that behind every nagging wife is a husband who doesn't listen. And that is gospel truth. Nobody likes to nag. There's no boss in this world who wants to say the same thing over and over and over again. There's no wife who wants to say the same thing over and over and over again. The reason why people nag is because the person on the other side isn't listening. So ladies and gentlemen, what must we do to listen effectively? Because listening is the key to empowering our spouses, our children, our colleagues at work, the people who we lead and influence in our lives. Number one, maintain facial contact. That's basic. Everybody tells you this. Number two, use positive body language. Show that you are interested. Lean forward. Ensure that you are part of the conversation. But for me, most importantly is number three. Ask the right questions. Ask questions that will help you to unearth where the person is coming from. Find out from your spouse, find out from your children, find out from the people who are giving you feedback at work, your subordinates, your colleagues, even your bosses. Ask them, where are you coming from? Ask them, try to get into their shoes. Try to walk the path that they are walking. That way you will have truly listened to understand. Ladies and gentlemen, empathic listening is not about listening to respond, as we often do, listening to react. No, it's about listening to understand. The most powerful, empowering thing that you can give to your spouse, to your children, to the people that you lead in your work, in your family, in your mosque, in your church, is the ability to listen. Thank you.